There's some data missing in the fertilizer use at the tail end because there's been some other political issues relative to who is supplying and how much and so on. But nevertheless, fertilizer is still an issue in terms of driving the crop yield that provide a lot of the feed for the people. That's not the only thing, but it's a primary focus on the need for self-sufficiency in the food supply. As I look at it, the topics that they're talking about, the second one is natural resource management. There's a much greater of the need to manage natural resources in a sustainable way, particularly relative to the environment. And another one is the use of the human resource, and I'm going to touch on that later. And most recently, a desired access to more technology. It shows you a map of North Korea. And all of us can probably see Pyongyang up there in the spot where it is. The farms that I was able to visit in the 3 most recent trips are in the Pyongyang area. I'm going to walk over there and point them out, and I'll talk just a little bit louder. There are 2 farms located up on the north side, which allowed us to travel for almost 2 hours in a van, in which I could look out the windows and see what's going on and take some pictures. One almost up here, other one off in this direction. The third one was over more towards the coast on this side, which gave us a little different climate as well as a different soil resource. The fourth one was to the east as we reach into the mountainous areas where food production is very restricted. And we also came down south to this area where it was quite dry. But collectively, of the 5 farms that we visited, there are some commonalities, and that's what I want to share with you today. But before we do, I wanted to emphasize again that if you see Pyongyang, you see something. You get out in the rural areas, you see something completely different. I tried to get estimates on what the difference in the standard of living is between the 2 areas. I have not been able to reach any consensus on that, but it is much lower in the rural areas, as I'm going to show you in just a moment. What about housing? On my first trip, I noticed there was very little traffic. Yet in Pyongyang, there's nice buses going around, taking people different places, apartment buildings, and in this particular visit, I made this last time, there are even more apartments. They're building more. If I look in the rural areas, they're still living in the houses that were there 50 or 60 or 70 years ago. 2 families generally to a house. And I've taken 2 pictures, one in the spring, in May, and one in November, of the same house. And it's interesting to see there's been some changes, not much. Again, I will point out that if you look very carefully, you'll see the same TV antenna in one of the houses. I don't know how many other families are living here without that. If you go in the summer, the house over here, you can see the garden in the front, the garden along the side, and you can see the vines that are growing up along here. You come back in the winter and you see what happened. Those gardens have been harvested. You can't see it very well here, but notice the vines that reached the top. And they've spread the cucumbers and gourds and other things now up on the roof, so they capture the sunlight there and don't compete with the crops down below. Very innovative. And I don't want to ever take that away from most people out there in the countryside because they have to be in order to make the use of the best use of those family gardens that they can. Contrast to this, let's look at other issues. Again, on my first trip, there's very little traffic in Pyongyang. Now there's a little bit more. And when I look at the automobiles, the Japanese and others like that, and they're driving on the steering wheel on the correct side, other than getting used cars from Japan with the steering wheel on the other side. The other thing is with the traffic control in Pyongyang, and most of you have seen the traffic control issues where the young lady is standing out in the street. And now she has an umbrella over her. She doesn't have to stand in the rain and heat anymore. But she's still there. The traffic lights don't function. The street lights don't function because they can save about 60,000 tons of coal. It's much cheaper, lower cost to hire the girls and pay the utilities. In the countryside, though, it's different. Very little vehicle traffic, only occasional car, once in a while a bus, and you see a lot of retrofitted trucks. Perhaps already you've noticed that in the back of the truck is a barrel-looking material here. That, my folks, helps that truck use or fuels corn cobs. If you look closely, you'll see it's retrofitted with a system where they burn corn cobs by directing the amount of air that can be fed into the corn cob mix. And by using a partial oxidation of the corn cobs, it produces methane. The methane can be condensed into methanol, and the methanol goes right out the fuel line into the carburetor. It gives about 20 to 30% of the power of a gasoline or diesel engine. So sometimes you see the truck going up the hill, 4 or 5 guys in the back, it slows up, they jump off, push it away, get over the hill, jump back in, and away they go. It's different. They won't run on the corn cob right away. But what kind of no energy in our rural areas? What about the kids? I go to Pyongyang and you see the kids all dressed up in their uniforms. They've been off here practicing for some sort of a celebration. They're coming back across the street. We had to stop with our van and I snuck a picture. If you look at it, what do you see? 3 boys coming across here. I'm not so sure they're real happy, but maybe that's another reason. These girls over here are wondering, what's going on over here? A Mercedes sitting here. This guy, he's got his cap on backwards. Where did he learn that? And he's contemplating whether he's going to buy one or he wants to see one. In contrast, you go to the country, and each village on a 5,000-acre farm or so, there'll be 4 or 5 villages with maybe 1,000 people each. There will be a daycare center because the mother and father both have to work and they drop the kids off here, and an elementary school. And I asked the people on the farm, kids go to elementary school? Yes. They finish elementary school, do they go to high school? Some do. But what do the rest do? They come back to the farm. And this young man over here probably didn't see a car, but I'm almost sure he's never ridden in one. His means of transportation is neat. He may have a bicycle in the family somewhere, or it's using an oxen in the car. A sharp contrast in living. I don't know what it is. 50% level? 40%? I have no clue. All I know is much different. No running water, no snow at all in some people. Well, let's look at agriculture. Here we see a field of soybean, and intercrop in the soybean is another crop, probably, I don't recall exactly, but it's probably pepper. And in fact, you see the eroded land that you see everywhere at this farm in the first trips that I've been making. You can see some strips of trees that they planted along, and some bushes on that side to try to hold back the soil. On this side, there's a short ledge here that's been constructed to try to slow it up on the water coming on. But you can see the rocks there because erosion has cut through that. There's topsoil down here, which is still erosion. Those are issues that we need to address because it's going to take 1,000 years to replace that topsoil. And it's going to take a lot longer to learn how to produce crops on it during that interim. Well, not only is topsoil being lost, but water is another issue. Of course, it's not due to the erosion. When we look at the rainfall, one of the first things an agronomist will ask is, what is the annual rainfall? And you tell him, but he will always ask a second question, what's the seasonal distribution? No. DPRK, just like South Korea and many Asian countries, have a monsoon climate. And 70% of the annual rainfall occurs in this area of August and September when the floods are coming. And they have to deal with that. At the same time, there's a deficiency of rainfall early in the spring, where they need water to get the seedlings of rice going, to flood the field. There's not enough rain at that time. And so there's a need for stored water somewhere that they can use. Now, fortunately, that's been held or handled in some ways. Through the Army and others, they built a long canal that brings water out of a lake, all by gravity. You cannot depend on energy. It has to be by gravity. That water then is coming down, and it feeds the canals that they use for the early season controlled or the rice growing.